It's disorganized play. It happens every Tuesday. It's disorganized play. We recap things on Thursday. It's disorganized play. We actually play on Wednesday. Why are you watching now? Bam. Why are you watching now? Well, because it's Tuesday. It's time to check in, everyone. Hello, welcome. I'm your host, Tom Lommel. I'm sorry if I burned your mic out there. It got into the red. My dulcet tones might be too much for the internet. Hard to tell. We're going to find out. So I'm sorry, everyone, if I did give your ears a rumble. That was not my intent. My intent today is to prep our next session of White Plume Mountain. Every Wednesday here on the Saving Throw Show, we tune in for the adventures, or bring you the adventures of the Iron Keep Chronicles, an all-star team of players. Join me in the wondrous mystery that is the Dungeons and the Dragons. So, thank you so much for joining me, everyone. I'm Tom Lommel. I'm your host. I am the Dungeon Bastard. Yes, today's topics: pinging plot radar, welcome to the Funhouse, and Administrivia. It seems like a short list. Trust me, you are in for a long ride here today. Hopefully not 2 hours worth of long, because it is hot as Tartarus outside here in Los Angeles. It is awful, and my air conditioning is very loud. So I'm going to tough it out as long as I can here. But yes, we are going to talk plot radar. We talked about several things on Thursday on the recap show. I hope you joined us. I hope you all had a great weekend. I had a nice, relaxing time. We talked about several items that we need to kind of like ping, and we talked about some plot radar stuff, and it's time to just like put some stuff to stick on the board. So we're going to do that. Welcome to the Funhouse. That's a topic that I'm just going to keep in my hip pocket here. And then Administrivia is just some announcements and things about the game and how it's structured and how it's played that we're going to catch you all up on for tomorrow. So that's the buzz. Without any further ado, oh, what's happening? Hello, we're back. Welcome back to Plot Radar. For those of you who are not familiar with Plot Radar, it is similar to a thing known as a Kanban board, Kanban. Oh, Mirakel, I'm sorry. Thank you for your service at the hotel or wherever in the hospitality industry you may find yourself. Perhaps you're serving food to fine schlubs like myself and my wife and dog. At any rate, for those of you who are not familiar with Plot Radar is a device that I created, which turns out to be somewhat similar to a Kanban board, Kanban, which is a development tool that allows you to track kind of like in a more amorphous manner, or more loosely connected manner, the status of projects and items within software design and development. So, you know, if you have one person working on the login screen while somebody else is working on the, the queries for the database updates or whatever it is, if you have a mass of tasks that kind of like shift around, a Kanban board can help you manage those things. It actually came out of automotive engineering in Japan, and that's why it's called a Kanban board. And that's honestly as much as I know about it, because I created this entirely independent of that idea. I created this and somebody said, that looks a lot like a Kanban board. Mwah! The magic of the internet. Parallel thinking has come to fruition. So, if we take a look at this, let me know if that's too dark. I can adjust the camera if you so choose. I could put an overhead light on or something. Anyway, let me know if the picture looks all right. Ooh, the casino. Good times at the casino. So, we have several columns here, right? These little silos that we've created. What this is, you know, if we were to look at plotting a novel, right, or to plot a movie or a play, well, the beautiful thing about a play or a movie is they have a finite end, right? Like, people show up, and roughly 2 hours later, they're going to leave. And so in the intervening space there, you need to introduce the premise or create the inciting incident, or just show the inciting incident or whatever it is, and then, raise them up through the various stages of drama, and then bring the whole thing to a beautiful and delightful conclusion, right? So you could actually, ignore these parts, and you could go Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, Act 5, and then Epilogue, denouement, whatever you wanted to do in this column, right? And you could sort of trace this pattern of rising action, and then it falls off at the climax and all that kind of stuff, right? D&D doesn't work that way. Yes, people show up, and maybe they play for a fixed amount of time, 2 or 3 hours. If you're playing Adventurers League, it's usually about 3.5 hours, and at least locally here. And then you're done. But in a campaign, the story continues. So it's more like episodic television, right? It's serial fiction. And so while it would be nice to have this over the course of the 2 or 3 hours, what you need to do is have a bunch of these, and so that when you stack the sessions together, it all forms an overarching arc, right? That all comes together. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the chat. Welcome to the show. I'm glad you're all joining me. I do sincerely appreciate your company each and every week. So, what Plot Radar is designed to do is, rather than being a tool to help you pace and implement rising and falling action so that your session has a feel of drama and excitement and a satisfactory climax, if you will, Plot Radar is instead intended to help you track all of the various plot threads that you have sort of willy-nilly or inadvertently, or maybe deliberately, hopefully the majority of them are deliberate, but as clues and bits of interesting information catch the player's attention, we put them on this Plot Radar, and we watch them kind of get closer and closer into their consciousness, or closer and closer into being resolved. Let's put it that way, right? So I like to talk about a concept called Schrodinger's clues, which is, it starts with probably something sort of a vague clue that they don't understand, and then through the action of adventuring, they gradually begin to learn more specifics about that thing, whatever it is, how it works, or what it's related to, or who got it, or who made it, or who dropped it, who lost it, whatever it is. And as the kind of fuzzy ozone of confusion around that object begins to collapse, then finally you have a very specific idea. Oh, okay, this was the murder weapon that was used to stab the Duke, and it was specially crafted by a clan of vampires who knew that the only way that the Duke could truly be slain is if he was killed with a very sharp implement that was made of pure ivory taken from the bone of a frost giant, right? Oh, wow, okay, well, it starts off as, oh, you find this piece of sharp bone that has a little bit of blood encrusted on it. Who cares? Okay, that's interesting, yes, but it doesn't lead to anywhere until you kind of pull those elements together and get them to a resolution, right? And then you kind of close and retire them. Things can also kind of fall off on this board. They can go dormant, they can be dangling, etc., etc., etc. So the idea is as Mirakel points out, right, that also if you made up stuff on the fly, that also goes on the Plot Radar. So there's stuff on the Plot Radar that the players may not know about. This is all about tracking awareness of the plot in the players' minds. So there are things that might be distant, like maybe your big boss bad guy is off in the distance. And in fact, let's see if I can make this legible. Oh boy, this is not a good marker for that. Farquaad, where's my markers quote? Is Farquaad even in the chat here right now? Whatever. We'll use this. So, speaking of big bad guys, a guy that's distant in our current campaign, but seems to be wielding a lot of influence, is Gulthias. Whoever the hell that guy is, right? Yes, thank you, BSB Care. So that's Gulthias. He's clearly some sort of vampire or vampire-like lord or creature or whatever he is. Name's been dropped a lot. Players don't know who he is, don't have a lot of information about him, but they have an awareness of him, and he's out in the distance. So you may have stuff that's out there that the players don't know, but you know, okay, I need to bring this character, object, hook, concept, whatever it is. This is really a tracking plot hooks, right? I need to bring these plot hooks into their awareness, into their consciousness, so that they can start connecting to other things. And you can have things where, all right, well, they know that there was a thing called the Gulthias tree, right? That's not really I mean, it's kind of closed or retired, right? But what I can do is take elements that are tied together and realize, okay, well, this is how I can step their awareness from one thing out to make this guy, to bring this guy forward, to bring this theme forward. All right. That's the high level view, or the quick, 5-minute discussion of how plot radar works. But essentially what it is designed to do is to help you keep track of the plot elements that you have juggled into the mix. And if some of them go away, you can sideline them. If some of them are in the players' minds, but they don't know, but you haven't been feeding any more connections to them, you can keep track of those things there. If you have an idea that maybe isn't connected to anything, but seems like a good idea, which we had last time, which was the book is a prison. Actually, that's sort of established, but is the keeps. That was the key realization that we had last week, right? All right. So, so that's how this works. Is there's an area down here for sparks that aren't necessarily connected to anything or aren't even on the radar, but you're like, oh, this is a cool idea. I don't know if I want to connect it to the plot yet, but I want to write down this cool idea. So this is your little brainstorm area. This is where you track the elements. You can write a roster of players on here. You could put dots on them for who knows what, who's connected to what, if you so choose. We don't use this a whole lot in my game. That's my fault. Whatever. All right. So let's put some things on our plot radar. Now, the Gulthias tree has been destroyed, so I'm going to keep that in closed and retired. However, what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to remove this. I'm going to remove this because it's just taking up space that I don't care about. Normally what happens is things move from right to left. So these are in the immediate column are things that are going to come up next session. I'm going to put one right on there right now. Roster dots were somewhat... I wasn't very good at keeping track of the roster dots. This could be a useful thing if I actually use the tool the way I envisioned using it instead of just being lazy about it, right? So Wave, the trident artifact, the magical intelligent... Well, let's get that in there. Intelligent. Sentient trident. So this is an interesting thing because last session they had no idea that this thing existed. I would probably have put that in the distant category, right? And now it skipped right over approaching and went right into immediate. Keep in mind, I knew that there were 2 spurs of encounters left, so I could have put that in approaching, knowing that I'm going to have to deal with this sometime soon. But they were not aware of it, right? It actually went from distant, they have no real awareness of it to immediate. It's coming up in the next session. Approaching is like 2 to 3 sessions out. What's approaching? I'm going to talk about this a little bit. I think something that's approaching in the game is we need to deal with control of the voices. That's a big... We identified some things on Thursday, so if you want to go back. Black Razor. Black Razor is immediate, honestly. Dr. BSB Care. Black Razor is also coming up in the next session. I expect them to get to Black Razor this next session, unless things go really off the rails. So we should put that in the immediate category. That's not approaching. It could be there. Have I given any thought to who it's going to talk to, or what if they just sort of put it away and don't use it? I think it's going to talk to whoever picks it up. So somebody's got to pick it up. You don't have to be attuned to this thing, and it's pretty clear in the adventure. Like, it immediately tells them, oh, you can use these powers, because it's supposed to be sort of this stunt set piece thing, so that if the water bubble collapses, you can grab the trident and save the party. That's a scene that's structured for a particular era of design and approach to DMing that I don't think is modern. It's interesting, but I don't know that it's a little ham-handed and railroady the way that it's written, right? So Black Razor, I think, is immediately coming up. Wave is I think, needs to talk to somebody. So we need to figure out what the implication is of that. Boy, there was something else that was approaching. Oh, yeah, there's some easy things here, right? So, something that's sort of been lingering in the distance, but needs to get addressed in the next 2 to 3 sessions, is Thon's father. All right? Yeah, you would assume attunement, but in the book it says it tells you, oh, you can immediately activate me. Oh, the bubble's collapsing. You can use this special power to save everybody. I would assume attunement too, but I do think for purposes of our adventure or for the session, it's more interesting if Wave can speak to them immediately. It doesn't have to be attuned. It can talk to you. Maybe it needs to be attuned to grant you its powers or something like that, or allow you to access its powers. But I do think that it needs to be it needs to be vocal. It needs to make itself known as a sentient object. All right. So Thon's father is definitely something that's approaching. Gulthius lives out there. Control of the voices is something that's approaching. And this isn't related, but it's sort of related. This is the overhead cam. If you're wondering, like, oh, what's this thing? What's going on there? That's this cam right here, you guys. Oh, look. You can almost not quite see it. All right. So, the other thing that I think we're going to have to deal with immediately is Bargat's son. Right? These are some major elements. Approaching other areas of the keep. This is the Tom cam. This is the James V cam right here. Thank you very much. This is enabled because of the James V cam. Other areas of the keep is something that's approaching. If I want to introduce that element, it needs to come out. We know that there's 8 other doors in the Iron Keep. So I think you can see, like, as we're putting this stuff on here, it kind of gives you an idea, like, oh, okay, now I can start to see the arc of my campaign of what's in play, what's not in play. I'm going to put something out there that's... I mentioned I was going to take this off. I'm not taking it off, but I'm changing it. So this is dormant right now, right? Which is hilarious to me that the seeds are dormant. But this is a dormant element, is that Avril took the seeds from the apple of the Golthius tree and buried them in the woods. I feel a little uncomfortable when I just write and don't talk. But I don't know if we need to deal with this, but it's certainly important. Yeah, and the free voices, I think it's not just, so we have the voices that TAC hears. I don't want to separate that from, I don't know. Oh, does anybody remember what I called them? I wrote that in the notebook. I'll put it on here as a... That's written kind of sloppy. They are sort of two different things. So there's tax voices, there's control of the voices. So, yeah, the stake. We've got the stake. That's right here. Root, the stake of the Golthius tree. Very good. BSB Care makes a suggestion. I name them like... I've got it written down. I'm not concerned about that. Could have... BSB Care suggests you could have tax voices inhabit the seeds and grow into something if you choose to make them corporeal. All right. So all of this feels like it's a pretty good... Oh, geez, guys. That's our main plot, right? So... Alright, so somewhere in here we've got to find... Actually, I'm going to put this in the immediate category. I was thinking about doing a plot vice today, but I decided to just do a plot radar, right? Yeah, the silent whistle and the whippoorwill thing, so in order to get Dell out of the book, right? These are just the tiny version of the sticky notes. Actually, I'm a giant. I'm 9.5 feet tall. So we need to introduce the silent whistle and the whippoorwill, and what does that mean, and how does that free Dell from the book? Freeing Dell. I think these two things are related. Whether you want to split them up into different sticky notes or not, I don't know. The question is, do we think Dell is going to be freed in the next session? And I don't think that's the case. Do they need to learn something about the silent whistle and the whippoorwill? Yes, they do. That needs to happen in the next session. We got a lot of information here that we need to make sure that we get out, right? So the beauty of this tool, how it really helps me as a DM, is I can plan a fight, or I can improvise a fight, and have whatever needs to figure out that, oh, okay, 6 vampire spawn go rushing into the room, etc., etc., whatever it is. That part's easy, right? Managing the flow of information and anticipating the plot elements that the players are going to grapple with in a particular session, that part of it gets hard for me to keep organized in my brain. That's what this does, right? It helps me bring to mind the pieces of the plot that they're working on. Those are in the immediate category. It also allows me to help think of, brainstorm connections between stuff that's foremost in the player's mind and stuff that's maybe a little bit further back, so that I can figure out a way to make a connection between Black Razor and Thon's father that maybe leads to Golthius. I can make a connection, like we did, between tax voices and the seeds that brings us back to Golthios, or whatever it is, right? So that's what this tool does. I think this is everything in play right now. And last Thursday, as we were recapping and talking about some of these issues, brought up the idea that the book is the prison for the keep, that it's the keep's dungeon. And I have to be honest, I really like that idea. That's a fascinating idea. Is there anybody else who has something that they think needs to get put on plot radar? We have a couple other things that are dormant out there, like let's just call this the Goblin Threat. Oh, I know another one that we need to put on here too. So that's dormant. The Goblin Threat. Let's put this to Oakhurst. Something that is not, it's out there. At some point, the town, I'm sure Oakhurst is gonna get a new mayor or new leadership. So that's got to be interesting. Yeah, so Sir Eldrick. That's a good point. I would say he's dormant for now, but I like the idea that if you could free everybody from the book, Sir Eldrick could come back. Yeah, Black Razor is key to the dungeon. I talked about that. I don't. Is it a key? Question mark? That really, I think, belongs on the post-it note. And then, no, Bargat was not the one who gave the wishes. So another thing that's sort of out there. I named them the most confusing set of Bargat and Bargad are their two names, right? Very confusing. I understand. I did that. I don't think Bargat is dormant. I think he is possibly a distant element. I don't know that they're ready to take him on or to deal with him. We could maybe even put him in the approaching column. Yeah, Gingy needs to be in that whole thing. This is actually a rollerball pen. Really, it's a 1.5 millimeter. It's huge. It's enormous. All right. So this is all pretty good, right? Dangling is stuff that they know about that that I've been ignoring, and I don't know that there's anything that I know that they know about that I've been ignoring too much. Maybe you could argue that Bargat I've been ignoring, feeding them hints about that, or just, boy, we could just put the Iron Keep in there again. The exact nature of put that dangling. It hasn't really. They have an idea about it. But it hasn't been explored too much. In this closed and retired column, we could put some stuff in here. There's one other thing that I think we need to put on the board here, and that is this was hinted at or sort of briefly surfaced in the last session. Column's getting kind of it needs to get a little skinny, you guys. Skinny it up. This is always what happens towards the end of an adventure, is all of your stuff starts stacking up into the immediate column, because you got to resolve all of these plot threads. So there's a lot of information that stacks up in this column. We have a way of dealing with that. We're not going to cover it today. But arguably, I could have used it. So, what happened to Bargat? What happened to the woman, to this great barbarian woman? Where did she go? What's her deal? What have you? It's one of the things that I think is dangling. No, it's dormant. Whelm the Warhammer, right? I mean, we know because we're all nerds. Yay, everybody, good job. White Plume Mountain has 3 different artifacts in it. And Whelm the Warhammer was the weapon that Bargat had, right? And Bargad, boy, I really named these terribly. Bargad offered the Paladin the Warhammer. Didn't take him up on it. So, that's our plot radar. We could potentially have a bunch of stuff in here. I don't know if it's worth populating that column or not. So, let's use this to make some intelligent decisions about how we're going to go forward. So, in the year of our Lord, 1806... I think our number one priority for the campaign at this point is making sure that we address this control of the voices thing. Because as I've talked about for a couple weeks now, I feel like tax voices are becoming a divisive issue within the party. And it's something that I don't like. I don't like this level of intra-party conflict, because I feel like some of it is okay. Oh, one character annoys the other character can be okay as a role-playing book. But this thing is something that continues to boil and is really in direct opposition to the lawful good ethos of 2 of the members of the party. And I'm worried that it's becoming something where they're going to come to blows over TAC reaching out and accepting aid from the voices. So I think this is the number one thing that we need to get a grip on. That's the number one issue that we need to bring to a resolution, or show a path to resolution, right? We don't necessarily have to immediately go, oh, and then you find a ring that enables you to control the voices and everything's fine. You don't ever have to worry about, like, the voices are going to do whatever you want from now on because you have this magic ring that you just found. Like, that's pretty ham-handed and a little implausible and not very dramatic in terms of story structure. It's very convenient. You can use that, that's in case of emergency break glass style of DMing right there, right? That's fine. If your party actually got into a fight at the table and 2 characters came to blows and somebody died or something like that, you could deploy that sort of emergency plot intervention. I think, however, it's more valuable and a more satisfactory play experience if, instead of being just handed the magical MacGuffin that delivers them control of the voices, then instead you show them the path to achieving that, and they have to follow that path. And that brings them then they feel like they've achieved the resolution themselves. They have undertaken the effort to solve the problem and wrestle it to the ground with their own bare hands rather than just being handed it like candy on the street. So we need to illuminate a way that TAC can get control of the voices. We don't have to deliver that way immediately, right? I don't think we want to dally on it, but if we can somehow share information that says, okay, whoa, well, it's not so much being in league with these voices that's necessarily bad. It's being able to resist their temptations. That's the real heart of the issue. So, that's important. There's another aspect to think about here, which is this is ostensibly sort of like each one of these vaults has been dedicated to a member of Bargat's family, and we know that this third spur of the trail here has to do with Bargat's son. So we need to make some decisions about the other areas of the keep, potentially, about the exact nature of the Iron Keep, and what is going on with Bargat and Bargad's son. I really did a bad job. I'm going to pay the price for this. I'm going to continue to pay the price for this as long as these NPCs come up. So I think that Bargat's son could potentially provide a path to controlling the voices. You know, if we kind of this is an element that ties into the plot. We got to get the silent whistle in there. We've got to get Black Razor. So I just want to take a moment, and I do want to acknowledge BSB Care said, weren't you thinking of having the shaft of the hammer as a stake that held Bargad in the darkness? And that's a pretty good idea, right? Is that yeah, we talked about that. That she staked him with her warhammer, and that's why he's got it. So that's an interesting idea. Like, that's an interesting way to bring that back in. I'm gonna just put this on here as a stake. Oh no, why is my pen drying out? All right, so let's just take a look at what's in our immediate column and how it ties into some of the other stuff that we have on the board. So we know we're going to have a role-playing scene with Wave. Wave probably knows some history, right? Well, you know, so let's start with the fact that we have to figure out what is the function or purpose of Wave beyond, or is there a function or purpose to Wave beyond just being a kick-ass, you know, intelligent trident, which to me is just the weirdest. Like, if you're gonna find an artifact and then you find a magical trident, it's kind of like winning the lottery or going on The Price is Right and then you win an amphibious car. That's cool. It's a little weird, right? So, so we have to ask ourselves: does Wave have any purpose beyond just being a sentient magic item, just being a weapon? And I think we've talked about this before, that it would be interesting if each of these various items was somehow a key to another piece of the keep, right? So that Wave led to some other area within the keep, like it could unlock an area. We do have that fountain that we described in the courtyard that didn't have anything in it. If you could put Wave in it, maybe that activates the fountain and opens another door or something like that. That could be interesting. So the fact that they're going to encounter Wave in the first scene compels us to think about, okay, what's the exact nature of the rest of the Iron Keep? what portion of the keep would be under the protection or be connected to or be unlocked by activating Wave. The advantage to this idea, as I've brought up previously, is if they have to use the sentient artifact in order to open an area of the keep, then they're not saddled with that sentient artifact. Now, if Wave is a key, then Black Razor is also a key. Maybe the Trident has historical insight. I think the Trident has to have historical insight. So in this conversation, there's two ways to approach this sentient magic item, right? One would be it doesn't have any long-term storage, right? It only really has short-term memory. Or maybe its storage only goes back 10 years and it's been entombed here in the keep for longer than 10 years, right? So it's like, oh, I can only remember 10 years worth of stuff. That's all. I have a very limited capacity to understand things. And, that also brings up the idea of what's the voice for Wave? What does it sound like? So that's an interesting situation to deal with, is how much memory does this thing have? Is it just like an unlimited hard drive where it remembers everything and it could be this huge exposition kind of thing, or device, or is it more is it useless? Like, I think it's useless if it's only knows 10 years worth of stuff and it's been down here for 10 years and it's been wiped essentially, right? So Wave should sound like Aquaman. Hey, it should sound like this. Hey everybody, it's me, Wave. Hi, how are you doing? Magical Trident. That's my Aquaman voice. Did you guys watch a different version of Aquaman? I don't know. Yeah. So I think we want to find kind of like a happy medium there in between. I know the historical canonical roles of every single thing that's happened over the past, since my forging, to I don't know anything because I've been stuck in this closet for a couple hundred years. So I think Wave needs to know some stuff, but we need to put some boundaries around, like, what does Wave know? Make a little note for myself. A little note for myself. Oh, it's back to school time. Go get your index cards, everybody. What does Wave know? What is Wave's purpose? This pen is crapping out on me. I think it's almost... No, it's not almost empty. I'm not sure what's going on. What is Wave's purpose? Those are a couple things that we need to tackle. Is it a key? If it is, is it a key? If it is, if so, to what area? Because the thing is, if we indicate that these are keys, then we're going further exploring in the Iron Keep. Now, I don't think that's a bad thing. Oh, Ernest Lombardi, thank you. Thanks for the big $4.99 sub. Appreciate it. BSB Care suggests that Wave can only reveal certain information when particular words are named or uttered. So like there's like keywords. It's an interesting. The trick about that particular approach is that that's going to immediately entice the players to say every single name that they know and go through their notebooks and start to say every single thing that they can and see what happens. I don't know that that makes for a great Uh, I don't know that that makes for a great role playing. Like, I don't know that's a good game experience for you all to watch or whatever. I think it'd be kind of funny, maybe. But as a DM, I can just be like, no, he doesn't know. No, 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 no. Oh, okay. So you say Gulthias. So that's another question. Is like, how much of the history does it know? Does it know about the keep? Does it know about Gulthias? Does it know about Bargat? Oh no, Hargad. Hargat. Hargat. That's why. See? Hargat. Hargat and Bargad. Hargat Axebinder. Pretty good. Yeah. So Avril will go through her notebook and drop everything. So there are ways to trick around with this, as you all point out. I don't know. I feel like there's a little more finesse that can be applied here. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know that I like the idea that it like then conveniently remembers things at an opportune time. That seems a little too convenient, a little bit implausible. It feels like cheating. All right. So we'll put a question mark around that. Also brings up the fate of Hargat's son, right? Because we know that this third vault is for him. Somewhere we need to introduce this silent whistle thing has been dropped a lot, right? So we don't really have the book on here as a thing. It's sitting in the Spark thing, and I think that the book really needs to come to the forefront here. And it's convenient that I'm going to put this in between text voices and the silent whistle. I think we really need to bring the book back into focus, right? Yeah, so maybe Wave fights back when it's angry. Yeah, I mean, it can push back on that. Since it's sentient, maybe it remembers things, but it wants to see what the players do, and it has to build up trust in the PCs before it gives them information. Yeah, I mean, that's a question too, right? It's like, what are Wave's goals, right? What are Wave's goals? You know, it's this whole NPC unto itself. I feel like there's going to be a big scene around. There's a big role-playing scene happening here with Wave. So in this conversation with Wave, I think we need to tie in the book, and they're going to ask about Hargat and Bargad and the kid, who I've temporarily named anyhow Daladar. Yeah, so that's over here. So there needs to be something about the book. There needs to be something about Daladar, and something about the silent whistle and the whippoorwill, right? So we may have some role playing involved around the book. One of the advantages to this technique is I don't have to plan out a role playing scene around the book, but just by going through this, I go, oh, well, there could be a role playing scene about the book, and that idea occurs to me, and I turn it over a little bit. I have an awareness of it. I don't have to write out a whole role playing scene with the book, but I'm aware of that possibility, and that helps me be prepared if it does come up. As opposed to just being kind of caught off guard because I spent 2 hours coming up with the stats for some sort of encounter or something like that, right? And then we're never getting to that encounter because they want to talk with the people in the book. So, that's a good question. BSB Care says, am I thinking of having Daladar in the book? That hadn't occurred to me. I mean, how many spoilers do you folks want is the question. Because I have some thoughts about Daladar that are not firm, but I have some ideas. We talked about, actually, this is not spoiler territory in terms of it's anybody who's been paying attention to this stream. So we have we talked about this? I don't know. All right, so here's, yeah, you want to be in suspense. All right, fair enough. So yes, iDragon says, I think the book definitely needs to be a part of the session tomorrow. It has been a big point of interest for Amy, Tack, and also for the rest of, and it's going to be a big point of interest for Avril. Avril could have learned something while she was in the book. Sir Eldrick certainly told them stuff about the book, about the nature of the book. If the book is the Keep's prisoner dungeon, there are, and we know that it has a finite number of people who can be stored within it, right? We don't know how many that is, but we know that when someone goes in, someone has to come out, right? That raises a lot of interesting opportunities to introduce new characters, new threads, bring up people who've been mentioned in history, like the rest of Sir Eldrick's party, etc., etc., etc. So that's pretty interesting. So yes, we need to have a major role-playing scene with Wave. It needs to involve the book and also the Axebinder family history somehow. I think it also needs to sharpen the party's desire to continue the quest, right? Yeah, it definitely slows aging and preserves lives. You know, so my take on why they couldn't see Sir Eldrick was that he had either climbed the tree and was out of frame, so to speak, or he hated the idea of being watched, and so he fell into this habit of always being on the back side of the tree. Like, that's where. But I really like the idea that he wasn't visible because he wasn't visible. He was hiding in his little confinement area. He was, at the back of the cage, so to speak. So that's something to consider. Yeah, they can see Dell now. They could probably go back and see Sir Eldrick and talk to him if they really wanted to. Brings about those are some interesting opportunities. They could go back and talk to Sir Eldrick. Maybe he's not as dormant as we think on our plot radar here, right? All right. Okay. All right. So that sort of sets the table for our prep going forward here, right? I think the stuff that's in this column, and freeing Dell, that's really what the core of our session tomorrow was going to be about, is setting them up with a bunch of exposition and having a role-playing scene with Wave and learning about the Axebinder family and sort of what their legacy is and where Hargat went and what happened to Bargat and maybe what happened to Daladar, etc. But as I was saying, we also need to sharpen their focus on finishing the quest. Give them the incentive that if you go down this final spur of the dungeon, then you will find an item or a key to the path, which will lead you to free Dell, and also control the voices. Texas Devon, I hope you're doing well. I hope you are safe and dry. Welcome to the chat. I've been thinking about you as the news has unfolded here. Some of this stuff, Thon's father, I think those things are approaching, but in terms of next session, this is the world where we live, and it's got to lead to these areas. There could be hints about Gulthios, the exact nature of the keep, Thon's father, other areas of the keep, etc. Ways to defeat Gingy or what have you. But this is where we've got to put our focus, and we've got to give them a little encouragement, a little meat to chase, in going after that third area of the keep. Right? Still don't get why this pen isn't working. All right, that's our plot radar. Oh, we just spent an hour talking about that. Oh, very good. I'm glad that you are safe and dry. So that's plot radar. We spent an hour on that. That's great. That's good. Terrific. Let's move on to our other topics. So, since Texas Devin, who lives in the Houston area, just or near Houston anyhow, lives in Texas, obviously, join the chat. I'm going to skip over to our administrivia. So there's a couple things that I just want to check in with you all about. Dom screwed up bumps last week and was extraordinarily stingy with them. And I was like, I don't know what's going on, but you know what? We started late, and we were under the gun, and people were, got there late, and when it was a big push, and so I didn't have time to check in and correct it, and we were all coming back from Gen Con, so it was we were all a little flustered. But we're gonna restore bumps to what they were, where it's $10, you buy them for the table, right? And also, I think what I'm gonna do in terms of bumps is, if a player wants to cash in 10 of them, they can activate their one cool thing using 10 of them, right? Because we've had situations where they stack up, etc., and I think that's I think that's a good way to kind of moderate how they get deployed, but still give the players their one cool thing, opportunity to use their one cool thing if they so choose. So that's something to think about. And then I think we'll also have inspiration come back to whatever it was. We didn't see a lot of players kind of forget about inspiration. There's not a lot I can do about that. All right, so that's two pieces of administrivia. Is if you were confused about how rewards were working last week, that's because we were confused about it as well. The second thing that I want to announce is, even though it's the end of the month and we got to pay rent on the 1st, thanks to your generous donations, getting Havana to DM and your generous donations last week and whatnot, we're doing okay on our fundraising. And so all the proceeds tomorrow night that we raise during our stream are going to All Hands, which is a charity that does disaster relief and intervention and tries to provide long-term solutions to catastrophic problems as they come up. They're at a 96.66 on Charity Navigator. You can check them out. I believe it's allhands.org. But everything that we raise tomorrow night is going to charity. That's my understanding with what Dom and I worked out. So we'll have exact details on that tomorrow, but tomorrow is going to be a charity stream to help raise money for hurricane relief in Houston. So there you go. It's a small thing that we can do to help ease the suffering of so many people who've been so dramatically affected by this storm and climate change and whatnot. So that's our administrivia thing. Thank you, BSB Care. Hands.org. Hands.org. All right. The final thing on our list here that we're going to tackle today. Let's go back to our original tales. So the final thing on our list that we're going to tackle today is a thing called Welcome to the Funhouse. Right? What is that all about? Well, I'm glad I asked myself this rhetorical question, because we're going to find out. So, I always think it's important to look at the adventure in the context of, okay, here's how it was created, and here's what exists in the dungeon. Here's the encounters, and here's the story as it is presented. And then the question becomes, how does this fit with the specific reality that I have created in my campaign? Because every campaign is unique. The players always seem to interpret things differently than perhaps the author intended. They follow hooks that the author thought were minor or didn't intend for them to follow, or more often than not, I introduce something that takes them off the beaten path, which is, I'm known for tweaking and twiddling with the game. Like, look at where we are. We've played mostly out of the book adventures, and we're well off the beaten path of any of these things, which is, that's the way I like to play, right? I like to hack this stuff. But the point being, I think it's important, especially when you're doing old school dungeons like this, to look at them in terms of, here's what the author's intent was, and here's what's actually going on. Here's where we're at in our game. I'm sorry if I seem distracted. I'm copying the map as we chat here. Here's what the author intended. Here's what we've actually got going on. And how can we adjust, revise, recontextualize the adventure to make it feel like a natural fit for our group, to enhance the play experience for our party as they exist now, in the rule system that exists now, according to their play styles. And to me, that's the biggest piece of the puzzle, right? That's the most important thing to realize, is that your players are going to have a different play style than what the author intended. That's going to happen. They try to write it like as generically as possible, but Dungeons and Dragons is not a generic game. It is very specifically influenced by all of the players at the table, by the GM at the table, by the dice rolls, by the character creation. There's so many areas, and that's not a knock. That's a feature, right? That's not a bug, it's a feature. By design, Dungeons & Dragons is a unique and individual experience. And yes, you can be bummed out if you replay an adventure by, oh, I know what the dramatic twist or turn or the big reveal is in this thing, or I know where the traps and the secret doors are and all of that kind of stuff, right? But it's still going to be a different experience because you have a different group of players around the table. You might have a different DM who's putting their own take on it, etc. So the bottom line on this is, part of your job as the DM, almost done, then all of this will make a lot more sense. Part of your job as the DM is to enhance that experience for your players, because you know what your players' tastes are like. You know what the history of the game has been up until that point. Like, none of this Golthius stuff would be coming up if we hadn't played Sunless Citadel first, right? Wouldn't be in this game at all. Now it's like become a major theme. I think they're probably expecting, like, at some point we have to confront this guy. We have to find out who he is. So, how does all of this fit together into Welcome to the Funhouse? The point I am driving at is that White Plume Mountain is a very specific example of a very specific style of dungeon crawl that was a signature module for its time. I don't think that's, that's really in dispute, right? Okay. If that's the case, it behooves us to look at what makes it a signature module. Look at what makes it so noteworthy, so worthy of inclusion in this 256-page book that, they put it in there. And then decide, okay, what can we do to recapture that signature experience? We're going to do that right now by taking a look at the encounters that are coming up in the third spur of the dungeon. So, there we go. So, it's time to get that tracing paper out that I'm so fond of. I'm not quite done tracing this. I'm basically done, but I do want to put a couple things in here. I'm going to use pencil for them, though. Or maybe a different style of pen. There's so many choices and options. Let's do some drawing, folks. I like drawing. And that's that. Use green here. Let's get some green going. That's important. That's happening. That's that. Oh yeah. I forgot about this part of it. All right, and these are all so weird. It's hard to read this stuff. Let's do this in pencil for sure. This is one of those areas that could be improved by an isometric display. Oh, everybody's getting in on the boss. I want to get in on the boss. Let's see if I can. I think I would shade this with. I sort of do. Where are my markers? Oh, I got 100 gold, everybody. Dry erase. Let's see how this turns out. Not great. let's just hatch this a little bit. One of the reasons I like to redraw this stuff is it gives me some time to like grapple with like, okay, what is the geography here? How does that get represented? All right, that's enough. Yes, I could have just used this piece of paper. Guys. Very good. All right. Let's get down to beeswax here. Let's get down to some DMing. This is our spur of White Plume Mountain. I will have everyone note that in my game, this is just a 90-degree elbow. It's not this weird 60 or 45 or whatever the hell it is. That this, in my game, well, actually, in my game, it goes like this, and then I'm really getting off the edge of the paper here, but so this is Hargat's door, and this is Bargat's door, and this is going to be the sun's door, right? All right, so that's that. So I look through these encounters. I mean, the great thing about White Plume Mountain is it doesn't it's the plot is very straightforward, and it's not very complicated in terms of it's very A to B, right? So when you go down this way, you're going to encounter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. You have the possibility to maybe go off this way, but there's not a lot of it doesn't. Once you follow this path, you have to understand 5 things, and then you've gotten to the final encounter, right? Similarly, here, you follow this path, you have to understand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things, and then you've gotten to what is technically, I think the big aquarium room is the final encounter. That's me, right? Technically, this Oni room at the end here is the final encounter. But you don't have a lot to do. It's like trap, ambush, trap, weird thing to interact with. Super big monster encounter, and then some other thing, right? So that's the short. This is the short version of what's going on here. But let's step back for a minute and think about the design, whether it's the intent of the design or the result of this design. I don't care about the intent that much, because if you know your product history, the intent of this design was to showcase a variety of ideas that the author had. It was really like a sample portfolio dungeon and not intended to be a coherent adventure. They just took it and published it as is, and no one expected that to happen, but that's what ended up happening. Okay, great. So the intent I can throw out right away. I don't care what the author wanted to do, because what the author wanted to do was to showcase a bunch of interesting ideas that he had. That's fine. The result, however, is what I call Welcome to the Funhouse, because this portion of the dungeon, far more than any other portion of the dungeon, is the funhouse portion of the dungeon. We have a trap. We have a weird heating thing. You know, earlier we had that rotating barrel thing in one of the other spurs that the party never encountered. We've got a slip and slide room. We've got, you know, Mr. Frog's wild ride here with the floating pool, and then we've got this multi-stepped, like, aquarium zoo thing that's going on here. So the question that I would encourage you as a DM to ask yourself when you're sitting down to prepare this spur of the dungeon is, what do my players like? Okay. Do they like fights? No, I mean, yes, they like winning fights. Do they like a lot of fights? Not really. No, they like role-playing, they like puzzle solving, they like riddles. Those are the, you know, that's the 2 to 3 legs of the four-legged stool that they stand on, right? So that's fine. This has a combat encounter, a combat encounter, a combat encounter, and maybe a role-playing encounter, right? But there's 3 combat encounters. We already know we're starting the session with a role-playing encounter. Is a lot of fights. So, when I'm sitting down to prep this, I look at what's presented before me, and I look at what the theme here is, which is this weird kind of like carnival funhouse theme is what's suggested to me. And then I want to ask myself, how can I bring that forward? How can I heighten that? How can I emphasize that particular aspect of the game? And then how can I foreshadow or integrate it in a way that seems organic, right? So that's what I'm looking at when I'm sitting down to do this thing. So I might consider, well, this ghoul attack is going to come pretty quickly on the heels of a role-playing encounter. So it might be nice to kind of switch things up and have a fight. That might be all right. Okay. Maybe I do something where I dress the ghouls as clowns or something like that. The other thing about this whole thing is these encounters are so weird, right? Like, they really are like going to a carnival and taking... You literally like load kayaks into a rushing stream that does nothing other than to deposit you into another room. So I'm asking myself something like, what if this is more like a Pirates of the Caribbean ride? Now, we've talked about this before, but your chief job as the DM is to convey information, to help explain backstory, to help reveal relationships, to help give clues about what the path forward is or how particular items work, etc., etc., etc. If you can find ways to do that integrate into your encounter design, it's far more organic and a cohesive play experience than going exposition tap on, exposition tap off, right? Shadzar has a different take about this, not being a funhouse, but more about being disoriented and no time to rest, repair. It's just kind of like a chaos box. I get that, right? But my point is, okay, well, if I can work exposition into this rushing stream kind of weird situation, great. Now I've got something where they learn stuff and they move on to the next encounter. So that's the aspect of, like, that's what strikes me. Like, you may have your own interpretation. Like, Shadzar has their own interpretation of, I think this is about, you don't know, north, south, up, down, left, right, keep moving. No matter where you go, you get pinballed from one side to the other. Something attacks you, etc., etc., etc. That's fine. That's certainly a valid interpretation of what's going on. Especially because you got this slip and slide room, and you got like take off your armor, and then you get ambushed, and then you walk into this room, and it's these multiple layers. It's kind of hard to understand, etc. I think that the danger to grabbing that theme and riding it is with inherent chaos like that, you either really need to like step up the pacing so it gets more and more chaotic, and comes to a conclusion, dumps you out into this room, or you're gonna be in trouble, right? You're gonna be in trouble with the pacing on that because chaos doesn't inherently have like rising action necessarily to it, right? So that's something to think about. Yeah, so I mean, I like this idea that it was originally a theme park. Now, we've set up these things as sort of burial vaults, right? So we have to somehow justify the idea that this burial vault serves a different purpose. What I also want to consider here is ways to change these encounters so that they're not necessarily just straight up as boring as written. Because I don't get, in this room there's like 9 guards or something like that just live there. Just all they do is like live in this 40 by 60 room waiting for something to come through this tunnel. That doesn't make any sense. So I want to rewrite this encounter so it's something that's more plausible, more organic, makes more sense. Because this dungeon has a variety of living inhabitants in it, but they haven't. The party hasn't encountered them because it doesn't make any sense for me to have this thing be sealed, and then there's some guy just living there, right? So yeah, there's a variety of suggestions here. Could introduce like some sort of like pocket dimension thing. That's something that we've talked about. We could have dwarven ghouls. In this room, spring the ambush. Shadzar says the great thing about these standalone adventures as opposed to adventure paths is that you can stick them wherever you want to use them and tweak them however you want, which is the core concept of D&D anyway. I mean, I think that's... I mean, yes, the core concept of D&D is that you're presented with materials which you are then going to adapt to your group as you see fit. Like, I just did a whole rant about that, so obviously I will agree with that point. I don't know that that's, like, that seems like a deeper meta level of intent than maybe what they were thinking when they wrote these things. Maybe not. I don't know the history. I can't speak for them. But I think even if you're playing an adventure path, those things are written with the premise that you're going to try to stick to it as much as you can, but of course you're going to steal whatever bits you want to steal and cut whatever bits you want to cut. So this kind of gets to like, how do we repurpose this? How do we make this interesting? And more importantly, how do we condense this down to the point where we think that we can maybe tackle this as within a session, along with the RP that's invariably going to come up with wave, right? Because right now I think we're a little bit heavy. Like, I'm not concerned about not finishing it, but I'd like to have enough material kind of like streamlined or hip-pocketed so that they could do it. And there's plenty of stuff, you know, like this trap, they'll probably bypass with one of Tack's spells or whatever. You know? But I want to consider, like, okay, where else can I do that? This slip and slide room. It could be bumper cars. Now, I have in previous weeks I've dispensed with the idea that this was a Toyland playground. But here's the here's how I want to spin this, right? Let's think about this. We know that this area of the Iron Keep is Hargat's domain. Hargat was the ruler of this area in the Iron Keep. And this was how she prepared this area before she left this plane and moved on to something else, right? So, clearly, Bargad is entombed. Hargat has left her final resting place. But what if the sun never died? Okay? Like, there's certainly the implication that the sun is dead, but we said the sun was lost. What if he's not actually dead? What if he was lost, but he's still alive? You know, lost can mean a lot of different things. And if that's the case, maybe they preserved his room, so to speak, exactly as he left it. What if this is sort of the wing of the palace that was Daladar's? It was his. I don't want to say like playground, but I want to say it was the suite of rooms where that child lived and had fun and enjoyed his youth. Okay, well now all of a sudden a lot of this stuff makes a lot more sense in terms of it's fun, it's got a little bit of a lethal spin to it, but now you replace these guys with toy soldiers. Now the weird, zoo aquarium menagerie makes more sense. This whole, the whole ride idea makes more sense. All of this stuff starts to fall into a contextual space where you go, oh, that's plausible. I get it. I understand why it's like this. We may have to rearrange the geography on this so that it's less like a dungeon and perhaps more like a hallway with weird rooms that go off. Okay, that's fine. That doesn't mean we don't have to include a level of malevolence to it or danger to it. Who says that this kid is an ordinary kid? But it certainly does give us a reskin, right? It gives us a different theme that we can apply to the dungeon that helps recontextualize the history of what's going on here. Because obviously, this dungeon was written without any of the history that we've been applying to it, so we have to make some adjustments to the adventurer in order to meld it together. So if you think about this, what if we've talked about these artifacts being keys to the keep? And I want to think that having ownership of that key allows you to do some sort of almost like semi-godlike construction or restructuring or whatever, right? Like you are able to invoke your will on a portion of the Iron Key. Well, what if Hargat had a key and it was her warhammer, but she had to use it to defeat her husband? And what if Wave is a key to someplace, And she also carried that, but she just used it as a key or whatever. And then finally, what if Black Razor was the key to this area? But then when the kid went missing or was lost or whatever that means, he abandoned it behind. He moved on. I don't need to play with these child's toys anymore. Or it was just left behind, and Hargat couldn't bring herself to actually restructure it. And what, you know, and so, and then, and also, like, if you were a kid and you could make, you know, make your toys, actually animate your toys and make them fight each other and stuff like that, you could have a fairly dangerous kind of environment. But you know it would be safe for you because you've got the key. So that's my whole, like, welcome to the funhouse type of thing, right? Is let's not look at this dungeon as the literal set of 7 rooms that it is. Let's look at it for the theme that is presented to us and find a way to enhance and recontextualize that theme so that we can organically introduce it into what's going on in the rest of in our campaign, in the history of our campaign, to make the things that we talked about earlier come together, form those connections, and make sense. Yeah, this thing is this. Dr. D and Mike Shea is with us here. This inverted ziggurat thing is so weird, and it's so iconic that I feel like I can't get rid of it. But to me, this encounter screams, put it on the table. Build the 3D model that you can move the miniatures around on so that they understand how the levels relate to each other. Up, 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 down, 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 whatever it is. Bust the glass here, the water flows into this area, etc. It's a very... I honestly, like, I question what's the bang for the buck on this particular encounter, right? There's a bunch of monsters milling around. They're sort of penned. It all sort of relies on the stunt of what if you break the glass and then all the water flows down to the next, like, it really, to me the stunt of this encounter is, I've got an idea, let's break the glass and drown everything that's below this particular level, and we'll just fight these things that are left, right? So that's I have isometric paper, so I could draw it isometrically and get it on the you know, show them a representation of what it's like. But I think in terms of people are going to want to move their miniatures around and know, like, how close that monster is and that sort of thing, I think I almost have to build it. That's a tall order. But, you know, I love going to Michael's, so maybe it'll work out. Yeah. It's an interesting encounter. It's an interesting problem. I don't know if it's a great combat encounter, but it's so iconic. Like, if you think of 3 things from White Plume Mountain, you think of bursting the bubble in the boiling caldera, you think of this weird ziggurat thing, and then the third thing, I guess, fighting the vampire, right? In the first spur that we went down. Getting your butt kicked by that guy. So, yeah, I'll post pictures if I end up doing it. You'll definitely see it. I wonder if you couldn't do it in Dwarven Forge, right? If you did it with blocks and you put, you know, those blocks of Dwarven Forge up, I wonder if you couldn't do it that way. The thing is, the real question here is, do you have to represent this water as its own separate cube, right? Or could you really just have 3 levels to it and just color the part of this blue? If you had a set of nesting picture frames, type of things, you could do it too. Doing it and making it look cool are two different issues. It is a lot of squares of Dwarven Forge. So I don't know. I mean, you could also collapse the dungeon and make the dimensions a little bit smaller if you wanted to. I don't know that would work very well because this is 20 feet across. If you only make it 10 feet across, it gets a little weird, right? You know, the good news is I have isometric gaming paper, so I could do an isometric view of this on gaming paper and have people move around sort of in three-dimensional space, but in 2 dimensions. We might go that route. All right. And then the final thing to think about is, like, what's this Oni encounter like? What if this was bumper cars? You know, what if these guys were dressed as clowns? Creepy. You know, I think for my party, they would enjoy the weird theme park vibe to it. I also think that this pit trap, like, is something that you can just edit out. You could just get rid of it, and no one would care, right? Yeah, I mean, obviously this is an RP encounter, but I think in terms of our campaign, like, what kind of RP encounter is it? What does the guy want? Does he give his treasure to the party? Like, how do you negotiate that? I have some ideas about this guy, but I don't think I don't think you can use this thing as written. I think you want to make some adjustments to it. As it's presented, it's an interesting idea for a role-playing encounter. Could it be more? And that's always the question you have to ask yourself. Is there a different spin on this that makes it more dynamic, more personal, more organic to what I'm trying to get at, right? So, BSB Care says, I think the Oni is the one to explain that the book is the Iron Keep's dungeon. Maybe so. You know, I mean, this is also where, as written anyhow, this is where Black Razor is. So keep that in mind, right? Griffin says, what if the sun was a required part of crafting and controlling this portion of the keep? They had to excise part of his soul to tie it all together. It was focused via an artifact, and the Oni is the personification of that. You know, it raises an interesting point, which is Black Razor eats souls, right? So what souls are in Black Razor? And do they serve a purpose? Like, if you get the kid's soul out of Black Razor, does this portion of the dungeon collapse? Or maybe it disappears, and that's how you escape from the whole complex, right? Like, canonically, you go into White Plume Mountain, and there's no way to get out. Like, they send you to this weird... You can either ride the flume of the plume out, or you can go to the re-education center, or whatever it is. Dungeon tiles with supports is one other recommendation here by Christian Linke for making this weird ziggurat thing. So if we use 5 feet is an inch, let's just compare here. So these are 10-foot squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's 100 feet. So it would be 20 inches across. That's That's it's 20 inches across, so that's almost 2 feet. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Doesn't seem right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, so that would be 130 feet. Divided by is 26 inches, so it would be 20 by 26 inches. I think you could probably slice a portion of this down so it wasn't quite so narrow of a rectangle. But yeah, the green foam stuff you get for fake flowers would be an interesting thing. I think Saving Throw might have posted it. Yeah, so if you click on that link, somebody did build one. That's a lot of work. I wonder if I can pull this into... Let's see if I can drop this onto. Did it go? Did it work? It did not. Let me try this. Right click. Save as. Save as. No. Don't do that. Let's bring this image in here. There it is. Bring this in. You guys can look at it. Okay. All right. Rescale. Transform. Fit to screen. Very good. So this is what we're looking at. Ding dong dang it. Turn my camera off for a minute. All right, so that's what we're looking at in terms of somebody built one of these things, right? Yeah, as BSB Care points out, like I could either spend my entire time building this thing, or I could enhance the entire dungeon with this thing. So, yeah, I just yeah, I know WotC has the White Plume Mountain map out there, but I look at this thing and I go, it's such a cool centerpiece, right? Like it's a cool idea. This doesn't seem to really do it justice because the little like roll of tape doesn't differentiate that area as being where the monsters are. Yeah, it's as BSB Care points out, like it's a lot of work. Could you print it out and cut out the layers? I mean, I think the best representation of this thing is going to be isometrically. And in fact, as our finale of the stream here, let's take a moment to just sketch it out isometrically. Closing time. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, well, hello everyone. Hi, my name is Tom Lommel. I don't know if you're familiar with the wide array of office supplies which I have at my disposal here. But, all right. So we said it's 20 by 26, right? I'm not going to do this in pen. I'm going to do it in pencil. It doesn't go down that many layers, right? Just make sure. Let's just say we start here and we go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 20, and that's 22, 4, 6. So we could start here. In fact, why don't we? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26. So this is the long way. Alright. And going this way, we want to go 20, right? 2, 4, 6, 8. Oops. Hey, not every single one. You got to count 2 between 2. Good thing I didn't do it. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So that's that way. Alright, well now we've got an axis here. Gives us our back corner, which connects right here. Yes? Am I getting into my own... Am I getting my head in the own camera? All right. I run the game on... I run the game at 8 o'clock Pacific time on Wednesdays, and then it's rebroadcast either on Twitch or on YouTube. All right. So we've got the 10-foot walkway. I wouldn't normally draw this out on the stream, but I think it's such an interesting opportunity. I don't think it's going to be super complicated. It doesn't take a lot of math to do, and I just happen to have... I picked up this isometric paper the other day. And I'm curious to do it on a smaller scale to see if I decide to do it on gaming paper, what it's going to look like, right? Now, this is where things get a little bit interesting. Let's get a blue pen out and actually draw the water for what it is, right? So this water comes into Okay, so this is the surface of our water, but our water goes down 10 feet as well. So let's make sure that we get that represented. It comes down this way to here. If we're going to do this in proper perspective, it's going to look sort of like this, right? I might have goofed a little bit. I don't know. Let's stick with my goof and see what happens. So does that look? Yes, the map of the week. Yeah, I use this map actually on my iPad. Yep. And that depiction of it does actually help, right? If you guys follow that link in chat. Because I want to give the 3D perspective of this thing. Okay, so I'll go from here. Question is, like, is this part of it, is this piece of it correct? And I'm not sure that it is. But I'm drawing it in pencil so we can fix it if we need to. Like, should it just go to there? And then be, you know, that doesn't seem right to me because perspective-wise, what we want is that this is a surface, right? They have a pretty good illustration of it in the book, to be honest. Maybe what I should just do is like snap a photo of that and show it to the players. And then this might do it. Right? Are we getting there? But the question is, like, does this walkway... Well, let's do this part of it. We know that this is accurate. So, should this come across here, right? Is there a question? Should this be like this? And I'm not sure, it gets a little too narrow in here, so there's something wrong with this, right? If we draw this blue line in here, and I'm just going to sketch it in with pencil, if it goes like this, then somewhere along the line we lost, if it's 10 foot all the way around, we lost this piece of it down in the bottom is too small, right? Thanks for joining us, Mike. Appreciate it. So there's something wrong with that, with snugging that up. It's a thing of like your perspective looking in there doesn't quite work that way, right? Now, if we shorten it up by 5 feet, maybe it's not as egregious. All right. If you come over here, you do it this way. But I think what we're learning here is that this is going to be very tricky to, or a little bit misleading to do in a true isometric perspective, unless I'm doing it wrong, right? That's certainly possible. I just sort of like winged this thing. I think it might actually work out. Your wife and I are gonna watch me draw. Well, the good news is I'm only gonna draw for a few more minutes, and then we'll call it good, right? But so this is level 2, and then the final level should at least go like this, right? But we cut this thing off, so I'm not sure that the perspective we've established is going to work out. I don't know. But that's 10, 20. That actually works. Whether it's, how far is it supposed to be across? 10, 20, 30. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Oh, my genius continues to go under-recognized. Okay, so just so we get the proper perspective on this, right? Like, you're not going to be able to see the bottom level. So once again, this is the surface of the waves here. Not very friendly. And this part you don't even get the proper perspective for, right? It just disappears downstairs. Alright, let's give this flooring some texture. But let's give it the proper texture. It doesn't look bad, right? Where do I want to go with this? It's getting so hot in my apartment, these crayons are getting kind of soft. It's funny. I think this room, here's what we're learning about this room, right? Is that it needs some sort of illustration. It needs at least a picture, if not a 3D model. But a flat map, this is not going to do it, right? I'm sorry, but this is not going to give the players the information that they want. It's not going to convey to them the three-dimensionality of what's happening here. So this doesn't go. I can't do a battle map with this. I've got to find a way, whether it's with dungeon tiles. Like, dungeon tiles is an interesting thing, but it's such a big area. And what this indicates is this is an artifact of a time when they didn't really, necessarily play on a battle map. It didn't matter. It was more theater of the mindy, whatever. Like, nobody thought about, oh, how hard is that going to be to build or to convey to the players? Because I guarantee you, this is the room where everybody goes, what? I've read this room like 5 times, and I go, what? And I know what's happening. So really what it comes down to is you have 3 levels. Level 1, level 2, and level 3. So you have 3 levels, but it's each level is made up of 2 bands that are next to each other. A walkway and water. A walkway and water. Except for the 3rd level, which just has manticores in it. Mike Shea, how dare you say you really can't run this theater of the mind? It's just too complicated. Of anyone, sir, I would expect you to have a deft and innovative solution to this very problem. But yeah, I don't know that you can. I don't know that you can. And then on top of it, you've got to convey the fact that there are monsters in there. It's an iconic encounter. But think about what's iconic about this, or what the iconic piece of it is. Yes, it's very difficult to get your mind around. I don't know that that's something you want to emphasize. I think the idea that there's this zoo that you could, like this living zoo that you walk around that can attack you, that's the basic theme here. That's interesting. And the fact that you can bust the glass and have the monsters sort of fight each other. I think that's the opportunity for something cool here. So let's take some notes, right? 1. It's a zoo. There's a lot of implications for that. What is that? It's a zoo. Break the glass. That's what's cool about this. It's a zoo. You can walk around it. You can walk. It's a zoo. You can walk around. And also that in some respects it surrounds you. Okay. So what's cool? Breaking the glass is something cool that you can do in this room. And the third and final thing is the monsters might fight each other. Oh, I missed the dungeon delve, you guys. Please do not feed halflings to the manticores. Shadzar, you are way off of my brand. Feed nothing but half. Wait until you get to the volumetric calculations to figure out how much water floods the levels below. They included that in the book, but it's like, oh yeah, if you break all of the glass, it floods the middle level to a depth of 2 feet. I don't know. I think that's one of those things where you got to hand wave science and just go, what's cool about breaking the glass? You know, the question behind each of these things is okay. It's a zoo. It's a zoo that surrounds you. That's cool. What's cool about that? Well, you could look at the monsters, and the monsters can look back at you. So it's almost like a fate fractal, right? So, okay, well that's a character. How could I interact with that character? Breaking the glass. That's cool. Well, what's cool about it? Okay, breaking the glass is cool because it floods the area. Let's decide. Let's not worry about math. Let's just decide what the effect of that is. And then, thirdly, the monsters might fight each other. What's cool about that? I don't have to fight the monsters. Well, okay, yes. But also, then that leads to the monsters kill each other in really creative and interesting ways, right? And they go berserk and da da da. So that's how I would approach this particular encounter, which is, let's not walk through and make every single monster move around on the map, and let's not turn this into some sort of bizarre slugfest. Let's instead think about, okay, this room is a puzzle box, and when you shake it one particular way, it does this thing, and if you shake it in a different particular way, it does this thing. Let's make it fun like that, as opposed to let's just treat it as a combat encounter that has a couple of unique properties to it, right? So, Christian Linky points out that if you count the squares of water, it gives you the volume, and if it's greater than the bottom level, it fills the bottom level. Yeah, well, I'm in the bottom level is only 20 by 50, right? So we know already that there's more than 20 by 50 squares of water here. But if this is the same, yeah, so you go, all right, well, what's 20 by 50? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Well, this is only 10, though, so 2 of those. Actually, what we learn is that this edge fills this area, and then all of this stuff must fill the rest of it to some degree. I said don't worry about the math, and then I got involved in the math. So that's our fun house, right? It's 4:14. I've been going on for 2 hours. So let's bring it to a close. Bring it back around. Let's bring the AC back on. Point being, we have these rooms that canonically work a particular way. But if the theme presents itself, if there's something that's suggested, let's find a way to adapt and emphasize and enhance that theme so that it not only is brought into kind of like a more modern context, or into the proper context for our campaign, but it actually enhances the themes in our campaign, right? So not only making it an organic piece of our adventure, but actually making it amplify some of the interesting things that are going on in our campaign. Revealing information, finding a way to tie exposition into the physical encounter. And then also just an opportunity to kind of reskin and retweak what's happening. You know, the thing about classic encounters is they're classic, and so you have to pay some respect to the source material, but also the best way to keep people from cheating at your adventure, you know, to busting the plot, is to reskin the stuff so they don't necessarily recognize what it is. You walk into a room with 6 kayaks and a river flowing through the middle of it, and if you've played through White Plume Mountain, you know what that is. But if you walk into a room that has a strange pool of black oil that wends its way from one side of the room to the other, and you have 6 glass discs that have little handles on them. Well, now who knows what that is, right? That can be totally different. Fakwad says, answer these riddles or the glass breaks and the monsters eat you and then you go swimming. Yes. All right. Very good. So that is our that was our stream today. A lot to tackle, a lot to deal with. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll put my wife's crayons away before she gets mad at me. Put that one in the quote box if you want. All right. So let's get back to wrapping things up here. It's been a long afternoon at this point for me. Believe it or not, that's a lot of talking. All right. So I will just mention our administrivia one more time. We're going to readjust the way that bumps work back to the way that they worked before the Gen Con break. That was just a minor mistake for those of you who are turning in a little late. It's not a big deal. Secondly, I think we're going to have one cool thing that our players can do. I think that's going to be, or that our PCs can do. That will be activated by spending 10 bumps. So that'll be back. It kind of went away when we rejiggered some of our reward tiers to make it a little more story driven than mechanically driven. Thanks for tuning in, Mike. The other thing is that all money that we donate or that we raise tomorrow night is going to be donated to All Hands, which you can find at hands.org. If you would like to make a donation yourself right now, please go and support them. It's all in support of Hurricane Harvey relief efforts. So we're doing a charity stream, very impromptu, but I wanted to let everyone know that that's what's going on tomorrow. So we're going to raise money to help those fine folks in Houston. Let's take a look at the rest of the calendar, shall we? So this has been Disorganized Play. I am your host. Tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, we will actually play through the rest of, well, maybe we won't get to the whole thing, but we'll play through as much of White Plume Mountain as we can tackle tomorrow night. I expect it'll be a fun session. As far as I know, everyone's back. Havana's back from her vacation. We will be joined, of course, by Amy and Grav and Eric. I just want to make sure that nobody was actually going to miss. But no, I believe everybody's going to be back for tomorrow night's session. So tune in tomorrow at 8 for that, or catch the replay Thursday morning around 10 o'clock Pacific time. We usually start a VOD, so you can go and watch what happened if it was too late for you. Completely understand that. So catch the VOD Thursday morning at 10, and then you can join me at 2 o'clock on Thursday for Disorganized Play, the actual recap show. We're talking about how it went, how this went, how it all went. We'll be talking about that on Thursday. What else is going on this week? So Thursday night is Crit Juice. The Wacky Boys from Crit Juice will be in the house doing their thing. And Friday at 8 o'clock is the second session of the new season of Wild Cards. DJ Dom Zook will be out of the action, but Jordan Caves Callerman will be there DMing all of our Weird West action using the Savage World system. So tune in for that on Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday. It's the holiday weekend, you guys. Do whatever. Go enjoy your last blast of summer. Get some gaming in. I think I'm going to try and play Tales from the Loop on Sunday. So maybe watch my Twitter feed to see how that goes. We'll see. That has yet to be decided. I'm going to some friends tonight to hang out with them, and we're going to talk about what our gaming plans are this weekend. So that is our lineup. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been a terrific a little discussion of what we've got coming up. You know, as the umbrella closes on White Plume Mountain, we have new ventures ahead of us. So I want to make sure we get all of our plot elements tied together, and you all have had some inspirational ideas, so I appreciate all of your input. Thank you so much to all of our regulars who drop in, all the new people who came by the stream, and thank you to Fakwad and the rest of our mods for keeping our channel clean, friendly, and approachable. And until next time, let's dungeon! 401 for 401. Oh, it's a magic time.